All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our live panel today. We are joined by some awesome guests. Really excited to get into the conversation. We're here today to talk about First Marketer No Playbook and what it's like building SaaS marketing from zero, especially in 2026. We're going to give it a couple minutes to see if some more folks will roll in. And then we're going to start with some introductions and get into the juicy questions. How's everyone doing? Nick, Morgan, Julia, how are you today?
I am great. The weather in New York is amazing today, and it's excited to be here.
Awesome. How's the weather in the Bay Area, Julia, Morgan?
Well,
Great.
up in SF, it's nice today as well. Thankfully, because we've had some cold wind the past few days, so it's back to sunny and beautiful.
Love that. Morgan, Bay, I feel like South Bay, where you're at, it's always sunny and beautiful.
Typically 10 degrees hotter than it is in San Francisco, and I got my garden going, so things are looking good.
Awesome. Well, as folks roll in, let's go ahead and get started with introductions. We have three amazing marketers live today. Thank you for joining us. We have Nick Lafferty, Head of Growth, formerly now Marketing Engineer at Profound, Morgan Freiberg, VP of Marketing at Shovels, and Julia Zatar, former Head of Marketing at Tavus and Loom. Nick built Loom's paid media, SEO, and affiliate programs, then spent 2 years consulting for brands like Glean, AngelList, and Air, where he unlocked tens of thousands, not thousands, tens of millions of dollars in pipeline. And now he's doing it all over again as Profound's head of first marketing hire, founding marketer, and as I mentioned, a new title, marketing engineer. Morgan, Nick, I'm sure you'll tell us all about your new role and what it entails as well. Julia oversaw product marketing and lifecycle marketing at Loom through the Atlassian acquisition, and then took everything she learned to Tavus, where she led a full rebrand, repositioning, and 0 to 1 growth as its founding marketer. Morgan's the founding marketer at HP's software division, also numerous Silicon Valley startups. You were the early marketer at Atlassian. Then he spent 7 years marketing Liftoff and helping it scale from Series A to unicorn through its Blackstone acquisition. Now you're back at zero, working with Shovels as its first marketing hire. You're building the story, the pipeline, and the go-to-market motion from scratch. I'm Sophia Leonova, the marketing director and co-founder of Proof Department. We're a brand and marketing firm for B2B SaaS startups that are ready to scale. And I'm going to be the host today. For the panelists, if you have any questions throughout, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. I'm going to be monitoring that throughout. We're going to either answer your questions throughout the panel or towards the end as well. So don't be afraid, drop in any questions you have as they come up. Awesome. Hi, everyone. Hi, Nick, Morgan, Julia. Thank
Hello.
you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, let's get started by setting the stakes. The narrative out there is SaaS is dead. The category as a whole is overcrowded. AI is eating the moat, and it's never been harder to build a brand from zero. You're the folks on the inside making sure that doesn't happen. So, what is your take? Is this narrative real? Is it just a headline? And what's different about building a SaaS marketing in 2026 versus maybe 5 years ago? Who wants to
Yeah,
go first? Nick, why don't you go?
I'll start. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's different now than when I started at Profound, which is almost exactly a year ago. A year ago, Claude Code didn't exist. Claude Cowork didn't exist. Anthropic wasn't eating into markets like financial services or legal services and AI, and so things have just changed so much, even in the past couple of months this year, compared to when I was the first marketer at Profound. A lot of what we're finding is that we're a product that we help companies understand how visible they are in ChatGPT and then create content and marketing agents to scale their output to be more effective. And a lot of what I found is that we sell to enterprise companies, and enterprise companies still want to buy SaaS software. They still need support, humans, a team behind them. And I think every team is like vibe coding their own AI tools internally, but there's still a need to buy software like the largest companies, and we still see that at Profound.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think SaaS is not dead. I think tools can come to market a lot faster, and as Nick said, people can kind of vibe code things internally for use within their team or personally, but at a broad scale, like we're on a Zoom, we're on Zoom now, which is a SaaS platform. We plan this webinar on a SaaS platform called Notion. Sure, someone could use Claude Code to spin those up, but those products are there and they're known and they're used, more broadly. So my take is SaaS is not dead. It just tools can come to market a lot faster.
Yeah, I think we're all going to agree on this one. I don't think SaaS is dead. Obviously, the model companies are eating into like very generic SaaS tooling. But actually, if I can add anything different, I would say I actually think something that's under discussed is that SaaS tools, are basically a workflow. And unless you already know that workflow, you're not going to rebuild it anyway. And if you're new to the job, I think sometimes you learn what the workflow is through the tool. So I don't think that's going away. And then just all the industries that have very complex workflows, like we do not need to reinvent the wheel for everything. You don't need to be an expert in everything. Sometimes you just need to like plug and play something. But it certainly is changing. And I think that the bar is higher and the stakes are higher. So you have to just think more deeply, like, can Anthropic just build this and will it take off in whatever, you're thinking of building?
So it's your take is it's SaaS is not dead. It's a sexy headline, but it is for sure more competitive out there and harder to stand out. And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today as well. But let's start with kind of the first day you joined your companies, were the founding marketers day one. There's probably 1,000 competing priorities. Everything to figure out from messaging to website content, paid SEO, the list doesn't end. How do you decide where you focused first? How do you determine those priorities? Julia, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, for me at Tavus, this was kind of decided in that I joined the company was a tool for marketing and sales people. It was a video personalization tool. And maybe 2 weeks in, we were like, oh, we need to evolve, aka pivot. And we basically, through some insights, through thinking, through gut feels, we decided that we need to build an API for developers and sort of get into video generation, which sounds similar but is actually quite different. And the task was launch this in, probably a month. I can't even remember at this point. And so it was all around preparing for that launch and trying to reposition as best I could within a very, very short timeline. So there was no way to fix everything, change everything, lay the foundations for this completely new motion. I'll also mention we were kind of evolving from purely sales led and layering in self-serve. I know we'll be talking about that later probably as well. But so I had to pick my battles and do as much as I could. There was no time to redo a website. I decided to just do a landing page, very focused on this new ICP. It was getting comfortable with cringe because we had one page in dark mode, you know, appealing to developers. The rest of the website was pink and yellow and white with lots of exclamation marks, a little bit more appealing to marketers, perhaps. So it was, in a way decided for me. And then it was just like focus on the priorities, do what you can do, and kind of be comfortable with it not being perfect.
Mm-hmm. So you were thrown into the deep end, just starting running live on a project and on a really big, important repositioning. We'll get more into that shortly as well. Morgan, what's your experience? You've done this many times over. How do you decide what's important to focus on?
Yeah, I think similar to what Julia was saying, someone has a job description up, they need marketing for something. Typically, they'll know what they want first. And so in my current case at Shovels, it was very easy because they were asking for content, and that's my I love building content marketing programs, and they needed, they defined exactly what they needed. They wanted, one pagers, they wanted to update, add new web pages. So it was all kind of outlined for me very simply. But then it was crafting the process for making that faster moving forward. They didn't have any marketers prior, so every time they built something, it was all just a one-off thing. So yeah, just adding a little process to that and making it repeatable and easily to replicate moving forward. But then, and then you layer on everything else, what about event marketing? What about social media marketing? They weren't doing anything on social. What about email marketing? You start adding all these other layers into it. But the initial sort of need at Shovels, they were already asking for it, which is kind of arming the sales team with collateral.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah, I had a bit of a different experience than y'all. Before I started, I put together like a master list of all possible things that we could do, send it to my CEO like a week or two before I started. And he was like, Nick, this is great. Let's do all of those things. And immediately I was like, oh, I messed up. Like I gave him the kitchen sink, and instead of picking something, he said, yes, select all. And so when I came in, I had to really prioritize and figure out like, what do I do? Um, and at that point, it was basically where where was I most opinionated about what would work well? And we sell to marketers. Marketers live on LinkedIn these days, and so one of the bets I made is that we should build a whole motion around amplifying what we're doing on to LinkedIn. And Profound, like we're kind of a data company in the sense that we send lots of prompts to ChatGPT and other LLMs and get a bunch of data back. And so we aggregate and anonymize a bunch of it and then started publishing research stories of what are the most cited domains in AI search, and it's basically looking at what is a unique story that we could tell that really no one else could tell or no one else had the bandwidth or capacity to tell among our competitors. Now, every company in our space publishes original research, and we were the first ones to do it, and that was one of the first early bets that we made. And I'll never forget. I was on the call with the CMO of Notion, who never inbounded to us. We actually got introduced to her via Sequoia, one of our investors. And she was like, yeah, I've been seeing your research on LinkedIn all the time. And I would have never known had she not just told me that, which is cool feedback to get that something is working and someone who is smack in your target ICP saw it, remembered it, and then told us about it too.
Would you say that one of the so something we find with a lot of our clients, especially when you don't have any marketing foundation, like you had all mentioned, like you kind of focused all on different areas or picked one battle and focused on that. But when nothing exists, you have to make a bet on something. So I feel like one of the kind of underlying things that you all are saying is that you can't do it all. You can't, maybe it's best not to dabble in like 50 different channels at once. You have to pick something that you believe in based on who your customers are, based on the market, and double down on that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think to kind of piggyback on that, kind of what Nick was saying, like having the kitchen sink, like here's all the things we could do. During my interview process for any company, I have just like 10 top of funnel buckets. And I ask, hey, how would you rate yourself currently on what you're doing with content marketing, social media marketing, SEO, email marketing, partnership and collaborations, paid advertising, trade shows and events, referral programs, and free tools and resources, and just see how they answer those. And like you really quickly find where there's big gaps or big buckets of areas that you could focus on or kind of prioritize if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think I would add like it depends the maturity of the company as it relates to product market fit. So I think we were a lot earlier than probably Nick and Morgan. And so product marketing, the real foundational, like who are we, what do we do, is a lot of what we had to focus on because you can't go deep into channels until you have that figured out. And that's hard because people just want to make noise. But you kind of have to hold back a little bit and figure that out. So that was a unique challenge for us.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things I'm picking up on is that all three of us have different backgrounds. My background is in growth, and I was first. Julia is more product marketing, and she was first. And then Morgan, I think, is content marketing, and he was first. And so all these different companies, maybe on purpose or just like by way of us being very talented, like they picked kind of like where they wanted their first marketer to spike in, and I think that's maybe what helped drive some of those early choices too.
Mm-hmm. And that illustrates that there is no one right way, right? You have to like pick something, double down on that, and prove it out or test different things. And yeah, Julia, to your point, having the foundation, the positioning foundation, which why don't we get into that next as well? But that's super important. let's talk about positioning. So all of you had come in at different stages, I imagine, and positioning was figured out to different extent. Um, the two kind of situations I see very often is you either have to position in a very crowded category, speaking of like SaaS being dead or not dead, but rather very overcrowded. A lot of categories are overcrowded. There's a lot of companies saying very similar things, positioning in very similar ways. And then on the other end of the spectrum, companies like Tavus, for example, are coming into not really having, they're so new, so unique in the product that there isn't really an existing category that you can clearly position in. How did all of you go about figuring out the right positioning for your companies? Did you already walk into existing positioning that was working and then you just took that and ran with it? And if not, what's your process for positioning a company?
I can kick this one off. So for us, it was definitely a moving target in the, almost 2 years that I was there. We both went through being in a crowded category of video generation and lip syncing to eventually doubling down on live generated AI video. And the reason for that was because it was a less crowded market, and we found that our team had unique skills to build that product. So, in a way, I had to do both. But I would say, like, overall, my approach to messaging from a structured, like, approach way is pretty consistent no matter whether you're in a crowded market or not. And it starts like very kind of it's there's no like rocket science here. It's start internal, your sales team, your founders, your product team, your engineers in our case, they're the ones working on this day in, day out. They're the ones that are creating opinions on like why we're building this and who for. For us, that wasn't like crystal clear. We were kind of like meandering around it. So everyone you talk to internally has a slightly different take. So it's going around literally interviewing people with a list of questions, capturing all of that, then trying to synthesize it. Then you layer in, external things. What's going on in the market? What's your unique take on the market? How can you differentiate yourself? Why are we different? A lot of why we were different, we found through like what customers were saying and the inbound that we were getting. Um, and then everyone has their messaging template and matrix. I love to use Make It Punchy is an agency that I don't know we've all worked with. I'm a huge fan of Emma who runs that, and I use sort of her matrix to fill out the messaging. One thing that I'll say is I think when I was at Loom and earlier in my career, I had the perspective that you can't really, it's dangerous to iterate on messaging too much because once you put one message out, people get used to it. And then if you're constantly changing it, it can get confusing. I still believe that, but I think times have changed. If anything, like the speed of change is so fast that you just have to get comfortable with like updating messaging and you can't be too precious about it. And trying to get it perfect and doing 50 cycles is just a waste of time because you're probably going to get it wrong anyway. So my biggest learning is just like make it less good and just ship it faster. And it still has to be good, but for those of us who just have high standards, like you have to find a balance.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything Julia said is like spot on. There's not a whole lot I would add to it. I think an internal sort of interviewing the team, the sales team, the founder-led, sales people that are on the front lines, that's the kind of the biggest sort of takeaway. And then summarizing and boiling that up to what the product is and the messaging. Then there's the flip side, as Julia said, is like kind of the external forces. How do, maybe the founders and the sales team call something a certain way, but then how do the customers call it? What do they say? What is the terminology that they use? And then you kind of boil that all up together to create the messaging. And again, going back to tooling and the first question we talked about, we have Claude Code connected to Fireflies, so it's super easy to do that. I can, now look at all calls instead of just relying on a salesperson's memory of a call. So it's a lot easier now, I think. Nick?
One of one of the most impactful things I did, and as someone who I bought Emma's book, Make It Punchy, before I started at Profound, and I think I read about a half of it, just wanting to like up level my product marketing skills. Um, and I got in, and a few months later, we sell to marketers. And our problem was that we had too many leads and not enough sellers to go talk to these people. Like they were in back to back demos for 12 hours a day, like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And leads were falling on the floor. And as a growth person, that was driving me absolutely insane. And so I put myself in the lead round robin and started taking demos. Didn't ask anyone's permission. Profound is very much a like ask for forgiveness kind of place, like move quickly. And started ripping demos. I took like 70 demos with people, and there to me there was no better way to understand what parts of my messaging was landing than talking to prospects and asking them questions of how did you find us? What's most interesting? Why are you here? What do you know about Profound? We recorded all of them, and I kind of downloaded that into a Notion doc I shared with our marketing team, our sales team. It was super helpful, but yeah, most applicable if you're a marketer and you sell to marketers for sure.
I would
I've
just
also
add, if you
go
if
for
you
it, Julie.
can't do what Nick did, but Morgan mentioned this as well. I think like it sounds obvious if you do it, but sometimes it's easy to forget to just listen to sales calls. I don't think I did that enough, because sometimes the sales team thinks that you're looking for something and they'll like try to translate a little bit what they're saying, but really you want to see it live. So watching those calls or just actually being in them, I think can be really key to finding some insights that are less obvious.
Hmm. Absolutely. We find that a lot as well. And I think being on sales calls is awesome. And then one step further, if you have a large enough customer base where you can bother clients and customers, I know Julia, you and I talked about it, that's not always possible. But with all of our clients, like where possible, we interview customers because also when you're being on a sales call is awesome, but when you get to kind of shape the questions that you ask, it's going to shape the kind of answers you get. And Nick, it sounds like you were able to do two things at once with your strategy. But yeah, there's nothing more valuable than talking to customers directly because as much as you can, like you think you know your customer and you can anticipate, what they're calling things and how they're thinking about it, or even the value that they get out of the product. Um, so many times your assumptions are wrong or not as crystallized as if you hear it from your prospects and your customers directly. This is maybe a little bit of a curveball, but on the note of like positioning and messaging, what is all of your perspective on positioning like AI specifically? You're all working at AI enabled companies, have experience with that. There's a lot of discourse around like, do you say AI? Do you not say AI? I saw a stat the other day, like 97% of like Series A, Series B SaaS companies have AI all over their homepages. That's what we see with every client that we work with. Everyone comes in with like a headline, saying like something about their AI. Do you have a perspective on how to message your AI product well, or how to position AI?
Um, yeah, we use AI for so we're first and foremost we're a data company, and so we use AI to collect and gather data. We use AI internally. Our URL is .ai, so we're not shying away from it at all. But it is interesting just the explosion and the AI barf that I see. Like I drive up Highway 101, and every billboard is AI this, AI that. And it's almost overwhelming. How many of those companies are actually AI, or what are they doing with AI? I don't know. But for us personally, like we are AI first and foremost for sure, just by the nature of our product that we sell.
Yeah, I would say I think I've found this in my career in general. Like, so what happened is AI exploded, everyone added AI to their messaging, everyone now ignores it to an extent. However, that doesn't mean that if you actually are AI, you shouldn't say it, right? Because there's a lot of people doing it wrong. So I think if you do it strategically, it's still relevant. I think plastering it everywhere is probably bad. We kind of eventually found that we should be referring to ourselves as a research lab because we kind of were like, wait, that's what we're doing. So we led with that in a way. but you don't have to put it in every headline and have it 100 times on a landing page. It's sort of more like how you're using it that I think is the nuance.
Hmm.
We just added AI to our product a couple of months ago, and before that, there was no AI in our product. Some of that is we, by nature of us, like we're so AI focused that it's like we tell companies how they show up in AI search, and so I think we could get away with it for a bit. But one of our products is a workflow builder, almost like think like Zapier, where you like drag in different nodes and it kind of runs top to bottom. And it's super useful and very horizontal, but complicated and takes forever to make. And so now we have a chat interface where you tell it what to build, and then magically it just builds your workflow for you. And everyone loves that. So I think if you do it in a way that's genuinely helpful and not just adding a like ask AI button to some part of your product, then I think that's the path forward that works for us.
Hmm. Let's talk a little bit more about positioning. What happens, or what's your perspective? What do you do when you're testing positioning? I know, Julia, you have lots of experience with this, and your first positioning hypothesis maybe is wrong. What's your process for, like, how do you assess if it's working, if it's not working, and what do you do next?
I can jump in here as well. I think like a lot of startups or early stage startups, you don't have the luxury of like scientifically testing it somehow. Um, definitely not when you're first putting it out there. So I think, you have to go with your gut, having done the rigorous process that we described before, and then you can do a series of things. If you I don't think you can know if it's right or wrong. I don't think it's that black and white, but it's like, do we feel like it's working? And there are signals like, are things landing when the sales team is talking about it? When you go to an event, are the conversations resonating? Um, are you getting conversion on your landing pages, et cetera? But I think, if you continue to see a problem, you have to ask the question, is it the messaging? Is it the audience, or is it the product? Because sometimes those things are unclear, and you might think it's a messaging problem, but it's like actually the product's not resonating, or we've been marketing the wrong use cases and the audience needs tweaking. I think there's no like real playbook. It's just having lots of conversations with product, sales, founders, and also to Nick's point, being in those conversations yourself. So I think when you're an early stage marketer, you're really doing a lot more kind of product and sales work, really, because unless you're hearing those things directly as well, it's not really hitting you. So yeah.
Yep. Same thing. Yeah, I would say just having that continuous feedback loop from the conversations. Are they landing? Or does it resonate? If yes, you're good. If not, try something else. But I've never had a huge messaging failure or like flop or anything that comes to mind. It is kind of just incrementally testing things and changing things. And as a company grows, as we talked about earlier, the positioning and messaging should also change anyways. So you're always kind of changing as it goes and grows.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I think the challenge that we're having now is that we were one product before and now we're two products. Like we were AI visibility, now we have like actions. And so everyone knows us for one, but not the second. And we'll have third and fourth products too. And so for us, the challenge is how do you educate current customers on new thing and then not water down your messaging and become like the all-in-one platform for whatever, which I think is like the dreaded messaging like final boss basically. Like you become the like rippling of your space, which is very hard to navigate, I think.
Hmm.
I can also jump in with a fun example. So we started out kind of referring to what we do as building like an avatar, or actually people were calling us that. Like you create an avatar and then you generate videos with it. And our founder hated the word avatar because it's kind of like a dumbing down of what we were actually doing. And it was not differentiate, can't say that word, differentiating us from some kind of like not direct competitors, but people that were overlapping. So we were like, okay, let's try something new. We tried digital twin, we tried replica, we tried human computing, human-like AI. And the funny thing was, like, we understood kind of the founder's vision. And in many ways, I think he was right. But where the market was at is like we are introducing so many new ways of working with our APIs that using the word avatar was a shortcut to help people understand, like, and people were still like struggling. How can we even use this? And so it was this like intense debate, like sales really wanted to use it. It was working from an SEO perspective. Emails were being more, open rates were higher when we used that word. So we ended up like moving away from it in terms of company positioning and stuff like that. But we were like, we have to be able to use this as a feature. And when we were putting up things on like software websites, what are they called? Little aggregators that like sell software. We would use that word or we would automatically be put into that category. And then eventually, as the product evolved, I think we were able to more confidently call ourselves human computing because actually the product could back that up eventually. We were doing much more than just like generating an avatar. So and that vision wasn't clear all along. So there was a lot of like back and forth in that. And I don't know that there's a way to like have done it better. It's just the nature of the ambiguity and growing quickly.
Mhm. Yeah, I think you're reiterating again that like how important it is to use customer language, even like if internally your vision, like you're always ahead, right, of where the market is or where your customers see you. And so, but it's still important to use customer language and then you can evolve it. It's not your end all be all. Just because you start with that terminology, that positioning, or that messaging, it continues to evolve. But sometimes, especially when you're a new product or a new category, it's important to make it as simple as possible for customers to understand who you are, what you do, what the value is that your product delivers. Does anyone want to add anything or should we keep it moving? Awesome. Let's talk about some tactics. You all mentioned that, things that though marketing is still B2B SaaS marketing, the foundations are still the same. There are things that are working now that weren't working, or sorry, the things that were working a month ago or even a year ago aren't working anymore. What's driving pipeline for you right now?
Yeah. We took this somewhat controversial approach recently to create a job and create a job title, which is literally my title, like marketing engineer. And you've seen other companies do this. I think Clay did it the best with go-to-market engineer. And really only one company in a category I think can do this. And luckily, Profound, we were first and we're biggest, fastest growing. Like we were the ones to be able to do it in the first place. And it's honestly been amazing to see the pickup from it. Even when we announced it a couple of weeks ago, we had a massive uptick in inbound contact sales and pipeline creation, which is kind of strange because we didn't announce product, we didn't announce new funding. Like those are kind of like the two big spikes that drive a ton of pipeline for us from a like social media perspective. And instead we launched a job title. It's like you can't do anything with that. Like, we had a training course and a university that we run, but that has driven a media pipeline for us, and then has driven a ton of inbound to me from people at Google and Block and Whisperflow, all saying like, "Hey, we think about the future of marketing in the same way. Can we talk and see like what does marketing engineering look like for Profound versus how we're doing it internally?" And so it's kind of like a non-traditional approach, and like we can't do it again really unless we invent another new job. It's like you have one shot to make it work, but it's been like very, very good for us.
What's your hypothesis on why that worked for Profound specifically? And does it have a lot to do with your audience being marketers, do you think?
Yeah, I think the audience was ready. Like we have a good audience in general who's kind of like receptive to what we do. We're seen as a market leader. I mean, we are. And then selfishly also because I was like the face of it too. Like I had this gigantic LinkedIn post of like, I don't want the head of marketing job. I want to do this instead. That popped off. James like referenced me, our CEO referenced me directly in his post. And so I think like not only did we launch a title, but we backed it up with someone who's been in the space for a long time, I think added a lot of credibility to it.
Fascinating. Really, really different strategy.
Uh,
Morgan, Julia.
Shovels, we don't do any paid media. So when I came in, founder was just not interested in it. You know, kind of we're at seed stage, so watching the budget is one thing, but also they were converting leads. So like, why would we waste money if we're already getting new people in the door? So for us, you know, the biggest thing has been just building out more content, working on SEO, working on AEO, organic growth, and you know, just having someone focused on that because they didn't prior. So for us, I'm in a lucky position where that's what the role is right now. I do want to introduce paid media. I do want to cast a wider net eventually. But for right now, the steady growth has been really awesome to see just based on organic content.
Julia, what was working for you?
Yeah, I think if I can give a non-scalable example, and there's a lot of chatter around this now, but I think events are back. Events are cool again. We went through this long period of, they were considered expensive. The pandemic happened, but now because digital is so noisy, even organic digital, people are trying to find ways to break through. And I think with marketing, it's kind of if one channel becomes saturated, you just have to switch, and either it's a brand new type of channel like AEO or it's an old channel reinvented. So we found events to be pretty successful, both kind of small dinners that are super targeted, but also just showing up to conferences, I think can work. So, if you pick the right conferences, we landed some of our biggest early deals at conferences, and it's very unscientific and it feels serendipitous. And, maybe at one event it happens and another it doesn't. But I think just showing up over and over again can be effective.
Quick
Julia,
question
do you? Oh yeah, go for it, Morgan.
for events. Do you find out the list of people that are going, or do you kind of email your list to see who's going to be there to set up, kind of like,
I
they
was
can, then, how do you just, what is the strategy around it? What do you do?
gonna.
For us, it was more experimental. So because we had a developer audience, we did like hackathons. We did a couple of or not a couple, but we tested conferences. That's harder because it's more expensive and the lift is really big. And then dinners are easier to put on, but they're still like a pretty heavy lift. So we just deliberately tried to do lots of different types. So I wouldn't say there's like it was very scientific, but we would try to find out, and in many ways, they don't always give you the list. So you have to kind of just analyze it by looking online, asking around. That's an underrated strategy. Like ask your peers, is this a good event? And then because we're in this new space, like Human X is a good example that we went to and got a big deal at. I was actually bearish on it, and it was our founder who really pushed for it, and he turned out to be right. It has ended up being like a kind of leading conference in the dev tool or AI tooling space. Um, but actually, another thing that I would add is when you're early, like to Morgan's point, and you don't have huge budgets, partner partner events is another thing. So like your partners might be bigger than you with a better budget and a more established brand, and piggybacking off that. It could even be your vendors, right? So you can do a case study for your vendor. So 11 Labs and it was one of our vendors or is one of their vendors, and they have obviously a huge brand. So like we did a hackathon with them, and that kind of gives your brand a halo effect. So we when I was doing this, because at this point this might be old news. I was We were deliberately trying to spread ourselves to test different types of events. And we hadn't like dialed in the event strategy. It was more in the experimental phase to like, let's just do a different types of ones and see where they go. And actually, like the hackathons did not drive pipeline, but they probably drive a bit of brand. So it's kind of like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Like I don't have a clear answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, we run a lot of events at Profound too, and like I always hesitate giving examples about Profound because I feel like we're kind of like a one of one example. Like how replicable is this given like when we launched and just like the industry that we're in being super hot last year. We fundraised 3 times. We did ABC all in 1 year, which is just not normal. Usually, we made our own conference. We ran a 300-person event in New York City last year, and it was so successful. We did it in London a month later. We did it in SF last year, which Julia came to, and then we're doing it in New York next month. And so we've done four of them in the last 8 months, 10 months, I think, and they pretty much print pipeline for us. In the beginning, we weren't sure if anyone would show up. We had a line around the block. It looked like an influencer event that, like, what's going on? Oh, it's a conference. It's a AEO conference. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, we way under expected how many people would want to come and be in person and like talk to other peers about this new industry that everyone is in and curious about. And our only regret is not going bigger the first time. So we had like 300 people in New York the first time, like 100% free, no cost, wait list. We approved people to make it kind of like feel more exclusive. 400 in London a month later, 700 in SF, and probably like 800 in New York next month. And so, and it's honestly cheaper to do your own thing than to sponsor something else. And so, kind of underrated, and it seems scary, but it worked out for us.
It's definitely a new perspective. I've never heard anyone say that before. It's cheaper to do your own conference than to sponsor one.
Yeah.
What was the seed of that idea? How did you arrive at doing your own conference?
Yeah, our CEO is ambitious, and he was like, I want to create the world's first and leading conference on AI search. And then he was like, okay, you guys go figure it out. And there's four of us at the time, and none of us had an events background. And so step zero was finding an events contractor to help us with all the logistics. Step one was find a venue. We use one of the co-founders of Ramp is an angel investor in Profound, and so we were able to use an auditorium in their New York City office for free, which kind of helped with cost there. And then we spent a lot of money on branding, design, to make it happen. But yeah, it was our CEO's idea, and that's a common theme for all the big stuff we do. He's like, "What if we did this?" And everyone does the like Ben Affleck smoking meme thing of like, "Oh, here we go," and then it somehow works out.
I would say it's actually a really interesting point because we internally also discussed a user or our own conference, and I pushed back very, very hard on it. And I think the difference between the stage that we were at and where Profound is that Profound has a big groundswell and very clear audience and a solution that's like obviously valuable and kind of just like has traction. And so the job is to capture that, right? And an event, a really cool event where you like innovate on vibes and have amazing speakers and everything, like can be super effective as they've seen. But I think if you're still really defining your audience, it can be like expensive in terms of time because that takes a lot of time to put together. And if your audience is if you don't have that organic groundswell already, it's too soon to do it. I think you have to pick the right moment for it to be successful. And so I think, for the early marketers out there, I think it's so exciting to like want to put on your own event. But I think if it's too early, you can feel confident to push back because I don't think it would be successful if it's too early.
Maybe in that case, the better approach to test is smaller dinners or more intimate events to start. We're talking about AI search. Let's dive into that a little bit more. We all know ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, they're eating away at the traffic that used to come from Google. Buyers are starting their search in AI tools more often now. Um, Profound, you're obviously at the center of that. Nick, maybe you can kick us off with talking a little bit about what's actually working today to make sure your company shows up in AI driven search.
Yeah, I think what's working a lot for our customers right now is honestly just focusing on it. I think some people, despite all the buzz and like I'm in the middle of this, and so I think everyone's so focused on AI search, and the reality is like most marketing teams have a million priorities, pressure to leverage AI in their jobs more, and probably fewer resources than ever to get those things done. And so, literally just like trying and doing things is what works for our customers, which is a very like unsatisfying, very like unsexy answer. From like a mechanics perspective, um, we see that content velocity is a real advantage for some companies. Like what I mean by that is, we found that about half about content that was published published or updated in the last 13 weeks had 50% more AI citations according to our data set than older legacy content. By that we mean like blog posts, website content, but it's the same for YouTube as well. YouTube gets cited, it's either the number one or number two most cited domain across all of the different Google AI models, unsurprisingly too. And any YouTube video before 2023 rarely gets cited. And so there's a freshness angle to what's working in AI search right now. And I think freshness in AI search is different than freshness in SEO or like Google search, in the sense that ChatGPT will pick something up in a couple of days versus Google, it might take months and months for something to hit page one. And so the velocity that you move and still publishing high quality content, of course, is a real advantage that I think smaller companies have that large legacy companies with lots of approvals can take forever. Like we work with one of the largest banks in the world, and it takes them 3 months to get approval to publish anything. And so if you're a small startup, like you can publish so much content in 3 months. And so I think that's an advantage for you.
I have a question, a follow-up to that. So you mentioned freshness of content. Obviously, there's publishing new content, blogs, pages, whatever it is. But then there's always in search, there's always this idea of updating existing content. And I don't know how realistic or how frequent people actually do that or take that into consideration. But do you have any insights into that? Like, are you updating parts of a page, parts of a blog? Like, what actually works? And if it does, what are the guidelines there, or what have you come across?
Yeah, every time I use that stat, people are like, "Oh, can I swap a period for an exclamation point?" And that counts as, as being updated. And like I know you know this too. The answer is no to that. I think it's like meaningful updates, product updates. Like in the background, I'm Claude coding an agent for my own personal website that monitors the profound changelog. And anytime something new happens, it updates, it stages a bunch of content to my website with any of the new product features that are new to Profound. And so it's like the answer is like a meaningful update, I think, is probably what I think qualifies. We're also adding in more expert quotes and like bylines and testimonials from people who are in the industry as well. And so like updating content does count in terms of like, does AI search think this is new or not? And like whenever I see citations for my top pages start to decline, I will go and do some kind of meaningful update, and then it'll kind of uptick back up. And so it's like part art, part science, of course, but I think it does work for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think what you mentioned, like having something automated, like quotes, adding quotes should be ongoing. So just kind of automate that process as much as possible. So that makes sense. Yeah, I was just curious because I haven't done it yet. I know I need to, but I just haven't done it yet. So thank you.
Yeah. The other thing that works too is even though like Google just deprecated FAQ schema, this is like very like SEO techie nerdy right now. FAQ content still works well for AI search because fundamentally you're asking chat a question and it wants to go find an answer. And so the more you can write content that is question answer formatted, that works quite well. Even changing some of your headings to be questions and not statements, we've seen upticks there. And so there's lots of like little things that compound over time.
Yeah, I'll add to that. Our website, in my research, in going down this rabbit hole, that was the first thing I did was added FAQ schema to like long form blog posts, and immediately our AI search inbound just skyrocketed. Skyrocketed meaning from zero to something. Not like crazy traffic, but before doing that, we didn't have any or hardly any. So for me, that was step one. So
Let's talk a little bit about brand. We're coming up to time. We'll talk about brand. We have an audience question we'll answer, and then we'll have a closing question. What do you do when no one's heard of you? You're a new product, limited budget. I know we talked about that in various different ways, but what is your strategy for creating brand recognition that actually compounds versus just burning cash on awareness that disappears the moment you stop spending? Julia, do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll keep this short. I think founder-led marketing is really important here. It's cheap in terms of dollars. It's expensive in terms of will and time. But I think, it's just really effective now. It comes across as authentic. If you see something posted by a brand, it's just not as real. People listen to it less. So I think founder-led marketing. But I think beyond that, one of my biggest lessons is, if you're a one-person marketing team at the beginning, that doesn't mean you can't get help from the rest of the company. So for us, we were our audience was engineers. And so really getting the engineers to help with content marketing can be really effective, whether that's recording demos or actually writing content, even coming to sales calls. These things all count. And so I think um, those things can be underrated. They feel really hard, but I think once you can get in a rhythm, they can be really effective.
Yeah, those all resonate with me as well. And I think another thing is, as a marketing team of one, everything that Julia said, but also just keeping the branding that you do consistent. Don't change it up. Don't get too crazy with changing brand. I know it's easy to do when you're a small company. You can kind of do whatever you want. But I think that goes a long way, just the consistency and having the beats consistent.
Yeah, one of the things that we did that was helpful is, yeah, to add on to Julia's point of founder-led marketing, which worked well for us, is that we built an automation that anyone who inbounded on our contact sales form, we send them LinkedIn connection requests from me and both founders. And like the goal is we just want them to get a drip of content from us on social. And so like I would, the caveat here is like be careful. Here is anything automation on LinkedIn can go wrong for you very quickly, as companies like Apollo have found out the hard way. But yeah, the whole premise is that we want people to see our content, and it just looks kind of nice if you inbound to a company and their founder adds you on LinkedIn. All of those are little brand touch points that is basically free, that start to compound over time too.
When's the right moment to invest more heavily into brand as far as a brand identity, more expensive website, more professional? Because it's not immediately, it's probably not before product market fit. But Julia,
Yeah.
do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Yeah. I think my new approach here is like with all these new tools where you can vibe code a lot of things. I think the quick and dirty website is going to be a bigger thing because we are literally going to be empowered, or we are already empowered to build our own. I think if you're still working things out, when you engage an agency, it's just naturally the back and forth makes the project go long. If you don't have clarity, that delays the project even further. So I think just like taking the matter into your own hands, getting it to a place that everyone is comfortable with, but while acknowledging it's not perfect, it's not something that we're going to keep for 5 years, but just getting it out faster rather than, it's the same philosophy that I said before. Speed is more important than perfection here. um, but the other thing that I'll mention is website and brand are not the same, right? Your brand is, your website is a piece of content in a way. It's your main piece of content, but that can change more rapidly, and your brand should be separate. And even though people often do update these things together, you can have clarity on your brand without having figured out perfect, product market fit or your audience, etc. So if you have clarity up front, I think you can, take a stab. It can be expensive and it's hard though. So for us, the reality was we didn't redo the brand till we had Series B funding. And then we went really deep, and it was a long project. It was like 3 months. It wasn't easy. There was a lot of back and forth to get to a place where we were really happy. And then we had to still do the website as well as part of that. So I think making sure that you keep those two things separate in your mind, even though you'll often do them together, but remembering they're separate, you can do one without the other. I think the biggest risk is when you do a big new website, but you haven't redone the brand, because I think there's an expectation that it's going to feel like a rebrand, but you haven't rebranded. And so that was one mistake that we made. We did a new website not the one that's live now. And it went really badly because we didn't do a rebrand. I think the expectations was that this was going to be this like amazing new thing. And it did a really good job at repositioning us. But the brand was the old brand and it didn't really align with the new positioning.
Mhm.
We kind of went in knowing that, but I don't think we acknowledged it aggressively enough. And just you have to be comfortable with like this isn't going to live like that website didn't live for more than a year. Um, but I think we could have vibe coded it instead of paying an agency a lot of money, and we would have done it faster. It probably would have looked better, and then we would have thrown it away when we really like had the time to go deeper.
Mhm.
Yeah. I was going to say, I just feel like all the companies I've ever been at for a length of time, it feels like every 2 years there's this itch to kind of, if not, refresh things or rebrand or whatever, but kind of that seems to be just a kind of a marker point that I've experienced in, 20 years of doing marketing. Just
Yeah.
and it,
One of the things we started doing is we did our first brand campaign after our Series C. I feel like Series B you can start doing. You have like more funding to do kind of like more like brand campaign, like out of home, subway, buses, transit shelters, that kind of billboards on the 101. If you want to be the other AI company with a billboard there, which we were for a while too. We were one of those. Um, is we make really vibey brand videos. Because again, like social is a big channel for us. And so when we announced the marketing engineer, we kind of worked with a creative agency to make a very vibey brand video. It's about like the role of marketing and how it's changed and evolved over time and all of this stuff. And we put calories into that, and now we use that thing everywhere. I just gave a big talk in London at an SEO conference, and I opened my talk with it. It's like this gigantic stage, like 700 people in the audience, and every other company talked about data and stats. And I was like, I'm going to show you a movie. It felt like when the teacher rolled out the TV in school for like movie day, but me on stage. And that was, I think, really impactful and not that expensive to put on. And we're getting so many ways to repurpose that same video that yeah, that stuff I think is also really interesting and yeah, not complicated to do.
Question from Liz. Liz is curious which marketing tools, AI based or not, could you absolutely not do your job without today? So a little bit of a pivoting to a tech stack question before we close
Claude.
out.
Claude,
Claude.
I would be so lost without everything in Claude right now. Like I use Claude for everything. I'm literally Claude coding something in the background right now and like get saying yes every couple of minutes when it prompts me. In the early days it was Cursor. Like as the first marketer, if I wanted to change something to our website, I just did it myself and then created a pull request and sent it to our head of engineering and he approved it. And so I think any AI coding tools you can use and learn will give you superpowers as a solo marketer if you're empowered to make those kind of changes.
Yep. Yeah, and to add on to that, not only just Claude, but Claude and connections to all the tools that you use for your workflow, whatever it is. So for example, our product is in a web platform called WeWeb, and Claude doesn't really connect to it very well. So we're transitioning over to Vercel. So just making sure that, Notion, HubSpot, whatever the stack is, it connects really easily to Claude. But yeah, that's same for me as well. Claude Code.
Sorry, Julie, before we go to you, Morgan, what else besides Notion and yeah, what's the tech stack that you plug into Claude?
Yeah, Notion, HubSpot. We're moving the product, website to Vercel, Fireflies. So like this is the first company I've been at where all of the customer calls and internal meetings is documented and easily accessible through Claude Code. So I mean that was a huge unlock, and it goes back to some of the earlier conversations we had. I don't have to bug salespeople anymore. I could just look up what I'm looking for on my own.
Julia.
I'll just say Whisper Flow. So in order to get Claude working really fast, um, not having to type and using Whisper Flow. So if people aren't familiar, you just like press a function key, talk. It's very good. It understands my accent. It understands like weird spellings, and you just press function, let go of function, and it transcribes everything. So when you're vibe coding, it just is much faster.
I'll add one more. I also use Whisper. Claude is also my currently go-to AI powerhouse for doing a lot of things. The one tool that I'll add, which is an equivalent to or similar to Firefly that Morgan mentioned, is Granola. We use Granola to transcribe all our meetings. So it's not a meeting recorder. It doesn't pop up into your meetings, but it transcribes the text and then plugging that into Claude, it's been awesome to kind of data mine all of the meetings, and you don't realize how much insight is in the internal meetings in addition to the external meetings and client meetings. And to like pick up on trends and questions that customers are answering or asking. And I think that also goes back as a great connection to messaging. At the very least, like mining your existing meetings for what are customers saying, how are they talking about your product, what are they asking. So that's been really awesome. And then producing content on that and updating your website. So it's all kind of this like beautiful ecosystem. So tool bloat is something that I'm feeling very much these days as well. Let's close out on one final question and a hindsight question. And I'd love for you to all be specific. What did you overinvest in as the first marketer that didn't pay off? And what do you wish you invested more in that maybe you underinvested into? Oh, that's a head scratcher, huh?
I don't ever over invested in anything. I'm a very frugal person and marketer. Under investing, I think for me, again, as a content person, just the SEO, AEO, what is the right mix there? That's kind of something I would definitely pay more to get this, in my current situation anyways. So
That's what you'll be doing next. Yeah, right.
I underinvested in paid early on. And some of our competitors were first and were able to capture a lot of customers very quickly because they burned more of their investor money on paid than we did, and so we had to kind of play catch up for a bit. It was like right around Series B for us, where our investors were looking at overall web traffic of us versus other competitors in our space and noticed that one of our competitors was like rapidly catching up to us, and a lot of that was coming from paid, interestingly. I think I so overinvested there or sorry, underinvested there, and I overinvested in newsletters and like newsletter placements for us with industry thought leaders. Like we tried the really big AI newsletters, really small niche SEO newsletters, and really nothing worked there for us from like a acquisition standpoint. Like there's probably some brand effect there, but yeah, newsletters really never worked for us.
For us, I would say two things, maybe overinvested in just like trying to get the message right. So just a time sink. Um, and then probably underinvested in content broadly speaking, video too, like I think Nick mentioned video. Um, and just like, more content. We did go deep on SEO, but I think we could have gone more on like organic content, basically. And probably I want to say events, but it's hard when you have a small team. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Really enjoyed this conversation. For our panelists or for our audience, thank you for joining. We did record this. We're going to be posting this everywhere, transcribing it, and we'll make sure to share it out. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a lovely day.
thank you.
Thank you. See ya.
Bye. See ya.